Have you ever been laughed at, not because of who you are, but because of the place you call home? That's exactly what happened to me. I own a small, peaceful cottage. To me, it's not just a house. It's a memory, a history, and a symbol of freedom. But to Karen, the president of the HOA, it was nothing but a joke. She mocked it, insulted it, and even tried to convince others that my cottage was worthless. But here's the twist she never saw coming. My little cottage is worth more than her entire HOA combined. And the day she found out was the day her fake smile disappeared. Karen loved control. She strutted around the neighborhood like she was the queen of the world. Every house, every lawn, every mailbox, she wanted it all her way. She thought owning a giant house with fancy glass windows and trimmed hedges made her better than everyone else. And when she saw my cottage, her laughter was loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Who would live in that?" she sneered. "It looks like a shack from the 1800s. You should be embarrassed." Her words cut deep, but I stayed quiet. You see, I knew something she didn't. She thought value was all about size, appearance, and shiny decorations. But real value goes deeper. Every time she mocked me, I smiled inside. Why? Because my cottage wasn't just a random house. It was a historic landmark, built with rare timber, designed by one of the earliest architects in our state, and preserved carefully through generations. It had both heritage and monetary value. But more than that, it carried stories that no mansion could ever replace. Still, Karen didn't stop. At HOA meetings, she made my home the center of her jokes. "Why don't we put a curtain around that cottage so buyers don't run away?" she giggled, and others laughed along. But here's the truth. People laughed at her not because they believed her, but because they were scared of her. That's how bullies work. They mock others to feel powerful. One summer evening, Karen crossed the line. She stood in front of my gate with her HOA friends, pointing and laughing. "Your cottage is ruining the image of our neighborhood," she yelled. "No one wants to live near this shack. Sell it. Move out. We don't need you here." I looked at her calmly and said, "Karen, do you really know what this place is worth?" She rolled her eyes. "Worth? Maybe $100 if someone needs firewood." That was the moment I decided it was time to reveal the truth. Now, let me take you back in time. This cottage wasn't something I randomly bought. It was passed down to me from my grandparents. They spent their lives maintaining it, polishing the wooden beams, restoring the stone fireplace, and protecting every brick. My grandfather always told me, "One day, this place will prove everyone wrong." At the time, I didn't fully understand, but now I did. Over the years, historians had visited, appraisers had written reports, museums had made offers, and real estate experts had told me over and over again the land and cottage combined were priceless. But I never bragged. I never felt the need to, until Karen forced me to. At the next HOA meeting, she started again. "We should find anyone who doesn't meet our community standards. That includes people living in tiny cottages." She glanced at me, expecting laughter. But this time I was ready. I stood up, walked to the front, and dropped a folder on the table. Inside were certified property appraisals, legal documents, and heritage certificates. "Karen," I said firmly, "this cottage you call worthless? It has been valued at more than every single home in this HOA combined. In fact, several national organizations have offered millions for it." The room went silent. Karen's smirk disappeared. You could feel the shift in the air. Neighbors who once giggled nervously at her jokes now stared at her with wide eyes. Some even gasped. "Millions," one whispered. "Yes," I replied. "And more importantly, this cottage is recognized as a historic property. It cannot be torn down. It cannot be mocked out of existence. It stands as a reminder of history, something no HOA has the power to erase." Karen's face turned red. She tried to laugh it off. Well, value doesn't change the fact that it's ugly. But no one laughed with her this time. That was the moment her crown cracked. The queen of the HOA was suddenly powerless. And let me tell you something. When the truth comes out, bullies shrink. Karen stopped mocking me after that day. In fact, she avoided me altogether. Her pride was shattered. But here's the lesson I learned. Never let someone else decide your worth. People will laugh, people will mock, and people will try to put you down just to lift themselves up. But your value isn't measured by their opinions. It's measured by truth, by history, by meaning, and by the strength you hold inside. So the next time someone mocks you, remember this story. Remember my cottage. Remember how Karen thought she was above me until the truth proved her wrong. Because here's the thing. You are worth more than the insults thrown at you. You are worth more than the shallow judgments of others. And sometimes, you are worth more than an entire HOA combined. Backhand index pointing right. If you found this story powerful, don't just move on. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because maybe right now, someone you know is being mocked for something they own, something they love, or something they believe in. And they deserve to know their worth is greater than anyone else's laughter. Stay strong. Your story isn't small. Your story is priceless. Have you ever noticed that when people are exposed, instead of admitting they were wrong, they often double down? That's exactly what Karen did after I revealed the true worth of my cottage. Most people in the HOA were stunned into silence. Some even started respecting me more. They realized they had been laughing at me only because Karen pressured them into it. But Karen? She couldn't handle the humiliation. She couldn't accept that the cottage she mocked so much was actually worth more than her oversized house, her HOA rules, and her ego combined. And so, she started plotting. It began quietly. Anonymous notes in my mailbox. Sell your shack before it falls apart. Your cottage doesn't belong here. Childish words, but filled with venom. Then came the petty HOA fines. Karen suddenly decided my grass was too tall, even though it wasn't. She claimed my fence didn't meet HOA standards, even though my property was legally exempt because of its historic status. She even sent me letters demanding I repaint the cottage, despite the fact that altering a historic property without permits was illegal. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was waging war. But here's the thing about fighting with truth. You always lose. I responded calmly. Every letter she sent me, I replied with documented proof that she was wrong. Every fine she tried to issue, I appealed with legal evidence. And every time she lost, slowly, the neighbors began to see the pattern. At first, they thought it was just Karen being strict. But soon, it became obvious she wasn't protecting the community. She was trying to destroy me. And people started asking themselves, if she's willing to bully someone with a historic property, who's next? One neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, came to me one evening. She said, "You know, I always admired your cottage. It reminds me of the home I grew up in. Karen told us to look down on it, but she was wrong. Your cottage is more soul than any of our houses." Her words meant more to me than any property appraisal, because at the end of the day, money is just numbers. Respect is priceless. But Karen wasn't done. She wanted to crush me, to prove she was still in control. So she did the unthinkable. She tried to file a complaint to have my cottage removed from the community registry. She called it an eyesore that lowers property value. This time, she thought she was being clever. She thought she could manipulate city officials into siding with her. But here's where the story takes a turn. The city didn't just reject her complaint. They honored my cottage. One morning, I woke up to find a letter from the State Historical Society. They had reviewed Karen's complaint. And in the process, they discovered new historical records about my cottage. Not only was it already protected, but now it was being elevated to a higher level of recognition. My cottage was officially listed as a state-protected landmark. Do you know what that meant? It meant no one, not Karen, not the HOA, not anyone, could ever touch it. It also meant the property's value skyrocketed even further. The state even offered grants to help with preservation, making my cottage one of the most secure and prestigious homes in the entire region. Karen didn't just lose. She lost in front of everyone. When the news broke, the community changed overnight. Neighbors who once mocked me began bringing flowers, cookies, and apologies. Some said, "We're sorry we ever laughed. We didn't know." Others admitted they were just scared of going against Karen. Suddenly, the cottage Karen had mocked became the pride of the neighborhood. Tourists came to see it. Local newspapers wrote about it. Children posed in front of it for school projects. And Karen? She couldn't stand it. I'll never forget the look on her face the first time a bus of tourists rolled down the street and cameras flashed in front of my home. She stood there, clutching her clipboard, her eyes wide with disbelief. Her empire of mockery had crumbled. The very thing she ridiculed became the crown jewel of a neighborhood. And you know what's funny? The HOA that once laughed at my cottage started advertising it. They put it in their brochures. Visit our community, home to the historic cottage. They even used it as a selling point for new buyers. The same people who once whispered that my home was a shack now brag about it. That's how fast tides can turn. But the biggest victory wasn't the money or the recognition or even Karen's downfall. The biggest victory was the lesson. People finally saw that Karen's version of value was shallow. She thought fancy cars, giant houses, and rigid rules made her powerful. But real value is deeper. It's in history and authenticity, in resilience. And most of all, it's in refusing to let anyone else tell you what you're worth. Now, Karen eventually stepped down from the HOA. She claimed it was for personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. She had lost her grip. She had lost her influence. And she had lost the one battle she thought she could never lose. But I didn't celebrate her downfall. No, I celebrated my freedom. I celebrated my cottage. I celebrated the fact that my grandparents were right, that one day this little home would prove everyone wrong. So if you're listening to this right now, let me tell you something. Maybe you feel mocked. Maybe people laugh at the car you drive, the clothes you wear, or the house you live in. Maybe they tell you you're not enough. But listen closely. Your worth isn't in their words. Your worth isn't in their laughter. Your worth is in the truth of who you are. And sometimes, just like my cottage, your worth is far greater than anyone could ever imagine. Backhand index pointing right if this story inspired you. Don't just keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone out there right now is being laughed at, just like I was. Someone out there needs to hear that their cottage might be worth more than the whole world thinks. Hit the like button, subscribe for more stories, and drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated, because your story might just inspire someone else. Remember this. They may mock you today, but tomorrow they may wish they had your strength. Stay proud. Stay unshakable. And never forget, you are worth more than their entire HOA combined.